Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Creepy Fox podcast. Today, we got another good episode for you, as we'll be covering true and scary subscriber stories that come from road trips. Now, these are probably some of the more chilling stories I've read in quite some time, so I'm sure you're going to get quite the chills as you take a listen. As always, if you'd like to get featured on a future episode, you can send in your story using my user submissions email. It appears on all of my videos. It's tcfnarrations@gmail.com. Also, you still have a little bit more time to pick up the Christmas Fox holiday design. You can find it right below the video player. This will only be available until December 31st of this year, and it won't be available again until December of 2022. So make sure to act fast if you still want one. With that said, let's get started with today's episode. Enjoy. Hey there, Foxman. How are you doing? I've been meaning to write in my story, and I finally gotten around to doing so. I hope to make it in before the end of the year. This is pretty short, but nonetheless, it's a scary experience that I had back in 2017 that had me fearing very much for both mine and my family's life. For context, this is from the perspective of a 38-year-old male. I was taking my wife, my 2 kids, a daughter and son, on a road trip vacation to visit the city of Guanajuato, located in this state, also called Guanajuato. If you like to see how this city looks, I forget which videos they were exactly. They're definitely from November and December of 2019, but the Creepy Fox has some episodes where he went there and actually filmed some background footage. You'll have to put it in a pinned comment or something, because you gotta check it out for yourself. Anyways, we are originally from the neighboring state, Michoacan, driving from La Ciudad Hidalgo, and we were pretty much in the middle of nowhere in the countryside, when up ahead of us, we saw various dark unmarked SUVs and vans begin to block the road. I was confused, considering there were no indications of traffic stops or signage that said we would need to come to a halt. There are tolls you need to pay every once in a while when driving in Mexico, but these are always ginormous rest areas with state employees that have you stopping. Nothing of the sort here. Well, as not crashed directly into them, we come to a stop, and we awaited these people's next move. It was only maybe 10 seconds, but it felt like an eternity, before all of a sudden, men armed with assault rifles and wearing coverage over their faces appeared out of the vehicles and now began to approach us. As a quick note here, nothing indicated they were police, which began to raise alarms in my head. What other armed individuals can you think of in Mexico? I'll give you a second. Guessed it? Yep, the Cartel. I'll translate everything said next in the following sentences so I don't have to keep jumping back and forth between English and Spanish, since I don't want to annoy you. What happened next was basically 4 out of a total of about 12 men surrounded our vehicle and then told us to roll down the driver's window. What other choice did we have, since they were pointing the rifles towards us? I nervously pressed the window button down, and I now get asked by the man next to me where I was going and what were our plans. I struggle to get words out as I tell the man I'm with my wife and kids, and I'm taking them on a little vacation and we're just trying to pass by. The guy now looks at his men for a few seconds before returning his attention back to me and toward the back seat. What lovely kids you have. They look just like you. They're both 7 and 8 respectively, and in their childhood minds, they honestly didn't think much of these armed men, what it's like to have such innocence. I begged the armed man that we aren't trying to cause any trouble and we just want to get to our destination, and thankfully after some short tense moments, he says, "I'll tell you what, you all caught us on a good day. We'll let you pass." I wasn't sure what that meant, but just like that, this stranger tells the men to move the vehicles, and with that, we are allowed to go. Have a good time, the man says. Before I waste not even another moment to drive out of there, my wife basically in tears with how scared she was. It wasn't until another 45 minutes later we did eventually reach a tolling area, and we told one of the officers there about what happened. As expected, none of their agents were out there, nor did he say would they ever point their weapons at unarmed citizens. When I mentioned that we might have encountered the cartel, he basically confirms my thoughts and details of the group, saying further that we were lucky to have gotten out of there in one piece. It is really sad because there are actually stories and encounters of this happening to people here in Mexico, where they'll get stopped by the cartel. But a lot of times those experiences don't end well. The unfortunate citizen, or citizens, will end up as another statistic in the newspaper, being lost to organized crime. Do I count myself lucky? Absolutely. Do I think they had bad intentions? Of course. Was it possible, seeing my children, they changed their plans? It is something my wife and I can agree on. Whatever the case may be, we're just very happy to be very much alive, and I'm glad that even though it is now just a story of mine, I can share it to hopefully raise awareness with just how dangerous it can be driving in the Mexican countryside. I'm an older listener of yours, at the age of 60, who enjoys winding down after a long day of work and listening to scary stories. I seriously can't wait for the days when I can just unwind and do that all day. But alas, I've got another 6 or 7 years to go until I can officially retire. With age has come a various amount of experiences and encounters that I oftentimes find myself sharing with family and friends. This is the first time I've decided to share this story, and I really hope you'll get a kick out of it. It was the summer of 1982, the year that I wanted to prove to myself that I can drive across the United States on my own. A friend at the time had done it himself, and he told me that through his adventure, he made many wonderful friends and everlasting memories. I wanted in, and at first I asked him if he would have wanted to join me. He was going to. However, his wife had just given birth, and he didn't want to be away from his family for so long. Well, I didn't want to wait until he would be free. Who knows how long it would have taken. So, with his advice and a road map of the US, I one day packed my things into my car, and I started to drive. I was living in Southern California, by the way, during this time of my life, and the plan was to head to New York. Now, instead of a straight shot, I took various different routes and highways so that I could get the best of the states. Whichever states I missed on the way to New York, I would try to drive through them on the way back home. Obviously, I could spend hours and hours talking about what I saw and experienced, as well as the nice families I stumbled into that let me stay at their homes, but that's going to make this entry of mine never-ending. Instead, let me focus on what my submission is all about. It was the return back to California. I remember it being well over 100 degrees that day, and as I had just entered northern Texas, wanting to take a break in the next major city I'd encounter, there was a problem that would soon arise. My car had overheated. This meant I was essentially made to stop at the side of the road. As you know, cell phones weren't available to the public back in the early 1980s, so the only way to get help would have been to get somebody to help me. But would I have been so lucky? The heat sure wasn't helping my decision-making. So I pretty much spent the next 10 minutes trying to see if there was something I could do to help get my car up and running again, while being on the lookout for some kind person who might be able to help me. Luckily, help arrived in the form of an elderly man who quickly came to a stop and asked what had happened and if I needed assistance. I told him I needed a ride, and he says there's a gas station a short distance away that he could take me to, so I can call for help. I did think about his offer for a few seconds before telling myself, sure, why not? I could really use the assistance. So I jump into the passenger seat and we take the next 5 or so minutes driving and talking. I recall how well we hit it off as he introduced himself as Phil, or something like that, and he started to tell me he was a World War II veteran and that he was on his way home from visiting his grandson. I told him about my trip, and he thought it was a really cool idea and that it was a shame it had to come to what it had. Fast forward to reaching the gas station, and we both get out of the vehicle and head into the little convenience store. The nice man who drove me there said that he'd keep me company until help arrived. Meanwhile, if there was any food or snacks I wanted, it was on him. A nice gesture, so I took it. Now, as I was on the phone calling for roadside assistance, Phil had entered the restroom to do what he had to do. About a minute after I lost sight of him, I'm shocked at what I see next. Out of nowhere, I see an unmarked SUV pull up into the gas station. Seconds after, someone in a ski mask holding a large hunting knife and wearing a backpack jumps out of the passenger seat and runs up to me with a purpose. Hand over your wallet and whatever you have. I guess he wasn't that smart, since the assistant on the other end of the phone could hear everything, though at first he might have thought somebody was playing a prank on me. I chose not to hang up, instead putting the phone down and doing as this guy said. I quickly handed over my wallet, and I now started to back up with my hands up. The man then ran into the store, and I watched as he went up to the cashier and told the clerk to empty the register. Now, in case you're wondering, I did relay the information to the assistant on the phone, and he told me he would have cops sent to the area, but that it might take a while. It did make sense. At this point, you might be wondering, what about Phil, the old man who was in the restroom? Was he still there? Well, he was, but not for long. You see, while I watched the robbery taking place, I saw Phil walking down the aisle from the outside of the window. But here's the thing. He's got a pistol. Where did it come from? As I soon learned, Phil was packing heat the entire time. I heard Phil tell the man to drop the knife, which was muffled by the window and the front door being slightly opened. I was surprised by the fact that the guy with the knife actually did what Phil said. He placed the knife and backpack on the counter, put his hands up as told, and was instructed not to move or try reaching for the knife, or he was a dead man. The cashier, seeing his opportunity, quickly grabbed the knife and soon joined Phil. Now, I can keep going with this submission, but it's getting to be a tad too long. So basically all you need to know is that the now unarmed criminal ran out of the store, got into his vehicle, and drove off, never to be seen again. I was left dumbfounded, and after standing there for a minute, just lost in my own thoughts, Phil snapped me out of it and asked if I was okay. I assured him I was, and I said that cops were actually already on their way, and we could soon talk to them. Unfortunately, I don't ever know if they ever caught that guy, as it has been a very long time, but if they did, hopefully justice was served. To the grandson of that nice man who picked me up that day, if your grandpa told you the story of the guy he picked up in northern Texas back in the early 1980s and who helped thwart an armed robbery, and you're just so happening to hear this, then just know I'm forever grateful for him. May he rest in peace, and may God bless your family. Hey there, creepy fox, long-time listener here. I have a personal scary experience to talk to you about that happened in 2018, right after what was one of the greatest vacations that I'd ever had up to that point in my life. For context, this is coming from the perspective of a female who at the time was 20 years old. One thing about me is that I look a lot younger for my age, partly because I'm fairly short, and so I get mistaken for being more like 15 or 16. On this road trip was myself, my cousin Melissa, she was 10 at the time, her parents, which would be my aunt and uncle, then of course my mom and dad. We were returning back to my uncle and aunt's home in Guadalajara from Nayarit, and we had chose to stop by the seaside in a small town as we wanted to take a break from driving and get a bite to eat. Now, anyone who lives in Mexico or has ever visited a small town in Mexico, then you know how quiet and lonely small pueblos can be. Streets and homes are very close together, and people are often walking about on foot, since the roadways are so small. This had been my first year that I'd ever visited my family here in Mexico, so seeing such a small pueblo in comparison to something like Guadalajara was a huge difference. Anyways, when we got to this little restaurant, we immediately were welcomed in by this really nice staff. The restaurant was underneath this huge tent, with the roof consisting of large, dried-out palm tree leaves tied together at their ends with knots. Posts in the dirt floor kept said roof from blowing away in the wind. At the very back of this restaurant were a few concrete steps that led you directly into this beach cove. It was beautiful. To the left of the restaurant beachside, a short distance away, was a small mountain cliff filled with endless green flora and shrubbery. To the right was what was honestly best described as an endless beach with homes hugging its border. I want to bring these details up now so that I don't have to bring them up later. When we took our seats, I told everybody that I needed to use the restroom and to go ahead and order me an horchata and some ceviche. They told me they would do so, as I now asked one of the waiters where their restroom was. They told me it's just out back, down the steps and to the left. Sweet. I head toward where I'm directed to, and as I'm about to enter this small restroom building, I get stopped by a man sitting on a rock next to the entrance. He told me he worked for the restaurant, and he said I would have to pay to use the restroom, and that if I had no change, I needed to go get some. Now, believe it or not, there are restrooms in Mexico that do charge for you to take care of your business. I find it to be a lot more common there than in the United States. Guess everybody's just trying to make some money. But how weird considering I had asked if there was a charge to use the restrooms, and the waiter said that it was for paying customers. Now, something about him was a bit off. Apart from smelling like alcohol and holding a large beer bottle in his hand, he wasn't wearing the same shirt that the employees at the restaurant had. Also, I was pretty sure that you weren't allowed to drink on the job, not that I think there are any places that let you do that. Annoyingly, I don't even say anything. I just returned back to the restaurant to ask the waiter what the deal was with the man and that I was told to pay. He told me there were no employees there charging for money, but he then says he might know what's going on. He tells me to wait, and about 20 seconds later, who was the owner says he would go talk to the man. He told me that he was a local drunk who liked to burn people out of money in whatever means possible. Kinda sad to be honest. I mean, he didn't even look that old. Perhaps late 20s, early 30s. I'm sure he could have at least tried getting a job doing something simple, but to each their own. I stood at the steps as the owner tells the guy to get lost. He does, and I then take care of my business. Now, thus far you're thinking to yourself, what does any of this have to do with your scary experience? I'm getting to it. Trust me, I just wanted to introduce all these details as not to miss anything, especially the existence of this stranger. Fast forward until after we're finished eating, the adults are talking amongst themselves, and Melissa and I are getting bored of just looking at our phones. We told our parents we were going to go ahead and walk down to the beach to soak our feet in the water and even take some pictures too. That's what we do. For maybe 5 or so minutes. Both Melissa and I have our backs turned toward the restaurant and the people behind us as she's in the water getting soaked. Meanwhile, I'm standing there filming the scenery so I can show my friends back at home. What happens next was so quick, so sudden, that I had almost no time to react. That's what makes this so scary. While I was so focused on the sounds of the waves crashing and Melissa playing in the water, I hadn't realized that somebody was approaching me from behind. It wasn't until Melissa turned around for a brief moment and raised her voice that I felt a hand go over my face. I was shocked when I then get pulled back a few inches and into somebody's grasp. Surely it couldn't have been my parents or aunt or uncle. Who grabs somebody like that? My adrenaline begins to pump as the smell of alcohol now enters my nostrils, and I move my head up to see the creepiest smile of my life. It was the drunk man from earlier, and he's pretty much hugging me like a bear. Melissa lets out a scream and begins running toward me as I think of something fast. I use my free hand to poke the guy right in his eyes, and then I proceed to sock him with all my strength on the side of his neck. He lets go almost instantly, and then he lets out a yell of his own as I now book it toward my cousin. At this point, the man starts to curse at us while he takes out a sharp piece of glass of what looked to be like a broken bottle. We booked it back to the restaurant, only to be met by my dad and uncle and one of the employees. The creep who bear hugged me stopped before reaching the steps of the restaurant, probably realizing he's going to have a hard time taking on 3 large men. Then just like that, he runs off down the beach without saying a thing. To say I was scared was an understatement of the century. I couldn't stop crying as I sat next to my mom, who was telling me everything was now all right and I would be fine. We didn't wait for the police to arrive, who were called, but as we didn't stick around too long after their arrival, we never did find out what happened to that guy. All we did was just leave and went back to my uncle and aunt's house in Guadalajara as I tried my best to forget about the scary incident. It's been a few years since then, and even now, anytime I think about the beach, that creep's face always seems to cloud my mind. A disgusting feeling, but if there's one good thing, I find comfort knowing that I'll most likely never encounter that man again. My advice to my fellow Creepy Fox listeners: always be aware of those around you, because you just don't know who might be sneaking up to get you. For the past few years, I've been working up all the way in Prudhoe Bay, Alaska. It is quite a distance from my home in Anchorage, but for the couple of months I am employed up there, I do make quite a living, so it's not something that I really complain about. Work life up in Prudhoe Bay is quite uneventful, and the workers here are just like me, ordinary people just trying to make their paychecks and then go home to see their families. Really, there's not much up here. That's why this experience doesn't take place up there. However, it does occur on my road trip back home to Anchorage. By the way, this was in 2015. Now, what a road trip it is. It's gorgeous. All around you are acres upon acres of mountains, frozen rivers and lakes, and the occasional wildlife you'll see at the side of the road. A couple of hours before I reached the city of Fairbanks, I started to grow pretty hungry, and I wanted to stop and get a bite to eat. Luckily, I noticed signage for a small town that had a diner, and so once I'm there, I pull up into the parking lot and I head in. It was quite busy, all things considered. It reminded me best of those old diners you see in classic movies, with its decorations and even nice staff who meet you with a smile. I chose to sit next to this really nice old lady at the bar, who said she always liked to sit here and drink her coffee and talk to patrons. I soon learned why. She was very talkative, and when she recommended the steak and mashed potatoes for a big, hungry man like me, I didn't question it. For the next hour, we're talking and eating as the diner starts to empty out, and eventually, The old lady says she's got to get home to feed her cats. So, I wished her a good evening, as she soon walked away, and I took out my phone to check the time. It was almost 8 p.m. If I can get into my truck, I would be able to make it to Fairbanks a little after 10 p.m. So, I left my money and change on the countertop, and I wished the staff a good night, as I now step into the cold October's evening. Here's when things are about to change. As I start to walk to my truck, I notice just a short distance from me the old lady from the diner, and she's now talking to this random stranger who's all bundled up. I wasn't going to pay much attention until I saw the man reaching for the lady's purse. She was struggling to keep it away from him, and I knew now this guy was up to no good. So, I quickly run over just as the man steals the purse, and I stop the guy just before he runs away. "Sorry, buddy, but that doesn't belong to you," I said in an intimidating voice. Without saying anything further, this creep pulls out a switchblade and now tells me to back up, or I was going to get stabbed. No way was that going to happen to me. If you're going to threaten me, I'm going to defend myself, no questions asked. So I took out my concealed carry pistol while telling the man not to come any closer to either me or the old lady. I was surprised by what this guy does. He drops the purse and he just takes off running. Well, to the best of his ability, he did actually slip on the snow, and I burst into laughter, telling myself, that's what you get for trying to steal from an old lady. Speaking of which, she thanked me profusely, and I told her the last thing I'd let happen to her is for her to get hurt or to even get robbed. Now, luckily, karma wasn't finished just yet. At this same moment, out of all places and times, an Alaskan state trooper is pulling up into the diner parking lot. You bet he must have been really surprised seeing me, as at first he was asking why I had my pistol out. I quickly was able to clarify what had just happened, and the officer decides to go after the would-be criminal. I decided to stick around to see if I would catch any action, but the only thing was that they talked to the man before placing him in the back of another cruiser and taking him away. Well, at least the old lady was safe. Anyway, that was pretty much the whole story. I got back into my truck, got to Fairbanks, slept, and then continued my road trip the next morning back to Anchorage without any further incident. Hey friends, thanks for making it to the end of today's episode. As always, if you did enjoy it, make sure to leave a like rating, make sure to leave a comment telling me what you all thought, and of course if you are brand new around here and you enjoyed what you heard, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell beside it. That way you'll be notified of any and all new videos coming to the Creepy Fox. Also, if you want to go ahead and get early access to brand new videos, as well as an ad-free listening and viewing experience, then consider becoming a channel member. Channel members, regardless of level, will always get this option available to them. It's a great way to support me and any and all future uploads here on the Creepy Fox. Which, speaking of channel members, thank you to Robbie, Haiti, Ingrid, Spunky the Nutcase, Bo, Rice and Beans, Scott, Sean, Blazed Goddess, Mandy, and Corey. Thank you so much, channel members, for your support. It means the world to me. Thank you also to the awesome regular viewers who leave their comments and share the videos with their friends and families. As you know, just simply sharing these videos goes a long way and ensures that the Creepy Fox gets to be enjoyed by people all around the world. Also, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who's been donating to my St. Jude's charity that I've been running here on the channel for a while now. It's really cool to be able to see everybody coming together and being able to support such a great cause. I've always loved to be able to help people in whatever way possible. So by doing this and organizing something so special, we can do that together. Now, don't worry, if you want to help out but you can't donate any money, you can actually do something and it's actually pretty free. All you have to do is just share the charity with your friends and family. Tell them about it. I just think simply getting more eyes on it really helps, get it out there. And, even if they don't donate to this charity, maybe they'll want to donate to a different charity. Whatever we can honestly do to spread some joy and spread some magic this season, well, it goes a long way, wouldn't you say? Anyways, that is going to go ahead and do it for me today. I'm going to go ahead and make this short so I can go ahead and upload this for all of you soon. With that said, take care and have yourself an amazing day.